Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Got an unwrapping video. This was sat by the gate when I got back from the funeral yesterday, and this has come from Carol in deepest West Wales, and she left me a message on Facebook saying that I should think of it as a buy me a coffee, but in present form. Having picked it up and given it a shake, although I didn't know what it was, I can now guess what it is, but you can't, because you can't pick it up and shake it, can you? Anyway, we'll get it open and see what we got. I'm reasonably certain I know what it is now that I've picked it up, and if it is what I think it is, it will get used for the first time tomorrow. I have a feeling it's going to make my life a little bit more, I won't say difficult, but complicated, on top of a step that's already been taken that makes it more complicated. Aha. We have plant food. Now this is obviously not for the orchids, this is for outside. That's not quite what I was expecting. I'll tell you what I was expecting. I was expecting some tomato feed, but as I said, when I picked it up and shook it, I could tell it was liquid in a bottle, so I knew it was going to be some sort of feed, and I then thought, well, it's definitely going to be for the garden. Visibly healthier plants in 7 days. Yeah. We shall see. So I'm just having a read. I know what I am looking for, the declaration. There it is, down there. I think that's a 5. It's a 755 fertilizer. Now, Miracle Grow is, hang on. This is what we've already got for the garden. These are the plant food granules, the slow release, and these are, it says basically fast acting nutrients to boost flowering and root growth, slow release nutrients to promote healthy foliage and longer lasting blooms. So that's why I got this, but this is a, oh, I wish they'd put it in a single place rather than spread it like that. So when done like that, it's difficult to work out what you've got. This is a 12. I can't work it out. That is wrong. You shouldn't be allowed to do that. It should have the 3 numbers. It's a feed. That's not, strictly speaking, as per requirements in this country. Because basically the nitrogen, it says total 12%. Phosphorus doesn't give a total, it gives separate values. And then the potassium. But anyway, that's a high nitrogen feed in places. Oh, I see why it's done in 2 things. There's 2 types of granules in there, isn't there? So one value is the fast boost granules. That's the ones with the high nitrogen, obviously. And but although I will still use those so that there's always food available, we get long wet periods, you know, then there's always food available. And then this is the stuff I've started to use now because I got told off for not feeding the plants good enough through the year. This is, it's in a tiny, like sugar type of granules, soluble in water, and it dissolves very, very quickly. What I do is it's got like a little scoop. You put it in the watering can as the tap's filling the watering can. Therein lies what's making my life a bit more difficult, because it's more difficult putting feed into a watering can, filling the watering can up, walking out, water some tubs, back, fill the watering can up, put some more feed in. That's more complicated than just going out there and standing there with the hose. Yeah? But nonetheless, that means the plants were getting a much better feed. However, this is a high nitrogen feed, this one. Again, no NPK. It's there, but it's broken down. There it is, NPK, it is there. 24, 8, 16. That's a high nitrogen feed. That's going to grow leaves, basically. Not the best type of feed this time of year, but it's what I had. So what we've now got is a liquid feed. It's the same make as this, Miracle Grow, all-purpose, soluble plant food, concentrated liquid plant food, and like I say, this is not a high nitrogen feed. This is it's a 7-13. That looks like 41, but it's obviously not. So it's 7-13, could be 4.1. So this is what you would call a bloom boost, yeah? Lower nitrogen and much higher potassium value. Or phosphorus. Yeah, phosphorus. I forget which way round they go. But anyway, that's a feed that's more suited for plants that are flowering or plants that are producing flowers. So I've now got a more complicated feed, yeah, because things in the garden, some things are growing leaves to enable blooms to come on the end of the foliage. That does need the nitrogen feed up to the point where the buds start to show, at which point we switch to this one. But then there's quite a few of the things that are finished growing and are only producing flowers. They need that one. So it's a bit of a mix, but I've certainly got more than enough to keep me going now. Bearing in mind it's towards the end of August, and probably in a month's time I'll probably be not feeding much, if at all. So, and yeah, there's some of the things actually in the planted border could probably do with a feed. See, now I've been sprinkling some of these in around the border, but they're not what Carol said. I mean, she's been growing stuff, gardening stuff a lot longer than I have, is that these are fine for newly planted stuff that's in a compost that's got some feed in it already. Yeah, so you know, if you're planting up tubs and containers for your garden and stuff, this is fine apparently for the first year. But once a plant's established in a pot and filled it up with roots and everything, this is not going to be enough. This is nowhere near enough feed for an established plant, really. So we shall see. Anyway, thank you very much, Carol. It will be put to good use. I wonder what the dosage is. When to use. Feed every 7 to 14 days from early spring to late summer. Only feed when plants are actively growing. Use on ornamental plants, fruits and vegetables all around the garden. The didn't say how to use. Add half a cap of Miracle-Gro all-purpose gardening and plant food to 1 litre of water. This isn't going to last long. My watering can, I think of it as a 5 litre watering can, when in actual fact it holds about 6.5 if you fill it right up to the top. So yeah, half a cap per litre. So it's going to be, let's just, what it smells like. I was just going to see. Yeah, there is an inner cap that's the measuring device basically, but one of those is for 2 litres, so if that's full, that's for 2 litres. So for my watering can I need 3 capfuls per watering can. But then we haven't got too much of the year left to be feeding. Anyway, we shall give it a go and see how we do. As I said, now that I know better for feeding in the garden, because like I said, this type of gardening is new to me. The only big garden I've ever had, it's a pity I haven't got, I've only got photos, actual physical photos of the garden I had that was a proper garden, as I call it. You know, it had an orchard, it had ponds, wildlife pond. It was a proper garden basically. That was quite a long time ago. It was before I had video cameras and things like that, so I've only ever taken photos there, and goodness knows where they are. They haven't been thrown away, they're around somewhere. It's all right, I'm just hearing noises from next door, bearing in mind they're on holiday. That's the cleaner. I can tell cleany type noises. At least I assume that's what it is. It's the only person that would have access to the gate code, and on top of that access to their front door code to actually get the key to actually unlock the door to get in. So it's got to be the cleaner, hasn't it? Yeah, so new to all this type of stuff, and the thought of feeding and things. So next year we will have a much better feeding program from the start of the year. Now that should make a lot of difference to the physical amount of blooms we get. And something else I knew but didn't apply to the garden, the thought processes, I would apply it to my orchids quite happily, is that when a plant is producing blooms and the blooms are open and they need to produce nectar and fragrance, they're still using feed. Yeah? So I've always said this with orchids, you know, you feed your orchids when they're doing something. Well, you know, producing the stuff that flowers do to attract the bees and the butterflies does need some feed. So next year we'll have a much better feeding regime, and although that takes more time, I'm still in a strange way reluctant to give up my time to do things when I've got so much of it spare. I mean, the only thing I've had to do today is sort out my shopping, which will get delivered tomorrow. That means going through the list of what I've already ordered, seeing if I've missed anything, and just making sure I've got everything I needed. It took me half an hour. That was all the thing. That's the only thing today I had to do, apart from watering some orchids. I count that as, you know, that's just normally there is something to water every day. Today the Phalaenopsis got watered. They needed a feed, that needed mixing up, you know, getting the meters out and everything. That's been done. That didn't take that long. You know, the day's this long and I'm using this much of it. Well, if I use that much of it to deal with the garden plants, surely that's worth it. So I need to put a bit more effort into the garden. It's not something that's got into my mind properly yet. I just sort of think it's there to look at and not necessarily having to do much work to keep it going. But I do, I'll say we've done with that now. Thank you very much, Carol. It is appreciated. And as I said, this feed says every 14 days. This says 7 to 14 days. So given that there's not much time left in the year, but there is still time for plants that have grown that can produce more flowers, there's still time for more flowers to be produced. We're nowhere near a frost yet. We should be producing blooms on quite a few of these plants right up until October and into October. So there's still plenty of time to get some of that into them. So tomorrow, today I used a hose. Tomorrow when we go round we'll use some of this. As I said, it's still a bit fiddly because I still need to water the bonsai, and they don't need this sort of feed. You know, they have got granules, and that is recommended by 2 of the biggest bonsai nurseries in the country. Well, sorry, the 2 biggest bonsai nurseries in the country recommend using the feed that I use in granular form on the surface of the pots. To water those, I need the hose. So 2 or 3 watering canfuls and still have to use the hose, so it is more work. But if we want a nice garden to sit in and look at all the butterflies and the bees when the sun comes out, which it hasn't done today, then we need to do a bit of work, don't we? Apart from the maintenance work. But I'll just get the camera down and point it into the corner of the garden. This should have been a gardening video, really. Turn this round and then you can see why now you can see why the fence still needs to be painted, and so does the tabletop and the bench. The shed actually looks quite good now. It'll be finished off when the felt is put on the roof. Both the painting of the fence and the felt on the roof need to be done before winter, so that's a job I need to sort of get on with, neither of which I'm looking forward to, but it needs to be done. So we'll crack on with that, and then painting the bench and the table may or may not get done this year. The bench is a right faff to paint. It's slats. They have 4 sides, 2 edges, a front and a back, and they are a nuisance to paint, and there's a lot of them, both the seats and the back, so that will not be a nice job to do. So but nonetheless, if you know, to finish off that needs to be done, I suppose. I put the plants back today and put the bench back so that I could go and sit out there and have my lunch, which I did. So yeah, you know, I mean, flowering plants like this, these yellow daisy-like flowers, and the helium behind. The helium is nearly finished blooming its first flush of blooms. It will produce more if it gets some feed, I'm sure. You know, the purple flowers there, the scabious, that's going to continue blooming for some considerable time. You know, the buddleia is just starting its second flush of blooms. So there's, you know, still stuff going on that could do with some decent feed. So we will get at it. And yeah, it's a pity everything in the garden doesn't need the same feed, but it doesn't. The cymbidiums need one type of food, the bonsai need a different type, and a different type of watering, both of those. And then we've got the garden plants. In actual fact, I think this time of year the garden plants will all have the one type of feed, which is flower production. So we'll work on that. And then even the, you know, if you think about it, even the plants in the gravel beds perhaps could do with a bit of feed now and again. They've only ever had the hose, and you know, they, in the main, they are very, very, very low feed requirements. Most of them only grow well in poor soil. They don't need much feeding, but perhaps they ought to have a bit, you know. Perhaps the granules, you know, the slow release would be more suitable for them, just to sprinkle in amongst them so that they get a bit of food when it rains, but not too much, obviously. Anyway, that's where we are, and I'll see you next time.